Story 1. Am I the a-hole for arguing with my boyfriend about him paying for everything? So, my boyfriend, 19 male, and I, 19 female, hit our first true argument today. It's been kind of brewing for a while now, and I think today I just pushed it over the edge. In our relationship, he tries to pay for everything, even when he doesn't have the money to. I offer to pay for stuff, typically when it's something I planned out for us, or it's our cookie dates, which is just us going and getting cookies from Crumble, but he doesn't like it when I pay or try to pay. I understand it's because of how he was raised, but I was raised where if you are the one planning it, or if it's something you want, you pay. I've told him so many times that I don't mind paying and that he doesn't have to always pay. The temporary solution was we each try to pay 50-50. I'll pay one day, he pays a different day, which was fine until today when I did not plan anything without asking first, if he would like to go to the winter park with me and my family this weekend. He said no because he has to save up some money. Fine, I knew he was saving up, so not a big deal. I knew that he was saving money, so I've been trying to pay for some more stuff if we're doing something that requires paying. But I asked him if he would still like to go, but I pay for him. I wouldn't have just been paying for him, I also would have been paying for myself. Altogether, it wasn't expensive, but he said no, that I wasn't paying. This did kind of upset me because whenever I try to pay for stuff or offer, he always responds with, "It's my job to pay," which I've never liked. After he said that I wasn't paying, I took it to heart and did kind of go off on him by saying that while it is nice that he pays, I can also pay for stuff, and I like to pay for stuff. Now he's upset and so am I, but I feel like my feelings are justified. Am I the a-hole for arguing with him about paying for everything? Wow, I didn't know that they had the Reddit and everything back in the 1980s. What is wrong with people? Why is this still an argument and a debate these days? Both people can pay in a relationship. It's not that big a deal. Guys, it is not your job to pay for everything. You're not the breadwinner, especially not when you're 19, all right? Chill out just a little bit. Both people can be equals in a relationship. It's not that hard to learn. I know some of you are raised with these weird old values where the man have to be. Calm down, all right? It's the 2020s. This has not been a thing for a long time. This isn't even the normal thing when I was growing up, when I was a teenager and started dating in the late 90s. I mean, come on. Man, have we not progressed as a society? Is this not just common knowledge now, or are that many people really hanging on to this super outdated mentality? Get over it. Story 2. My mother decided to get married the weekend before me. I, 26 female, and my fiance, 26 male, are getting married in 2 weeks. We've been engaged with our date set for over a year. My mom was the first person we called when we got engaged, and all she said was, "I'm sure I'm the last to know. You're probably sick of hearing congratulations by now." She flew out a couple months later for our engagement party. I was outside with my friend when she stormed outside past everyone else sobbing and wouldn't speak to me except to yell at me to go back inside. Later she told me she was just overwhelmed. Then she met her boyfriend. She told me he makes her feel so loved like my fiance does for me, but that she was also still seeing a few other people, mostly because her new boyfriend doesn't speak any English and my mom doesn't speak Spanish. They communicate through Google Translate. A few months later, my fiancé are in my hometown for a childhood friend's wedding. My mother was also invited and brought her boyfriend. I was at the wedding, so my fiancé was stuck next to them for the ceremony. He says they made out the whole time, and whenever they weren't, my mom was complaining. During the reception, if they weren't on the dance floor grinding on each other, they were back at their table making out. He even had his hand up her dress on several occasions. I brought up this behavior on the drive home, and she said, "He's Latin, he's just very passionate." While we were in town, my MOH decided to throw us a wedding shower. I even made sure the bride whose wedding I was in was okay with it first. But it was a great chance for my fiancé to meet all of my friends, people I haven't seen since before the pandemic the last time I was there. My maid of honor tried to include my mom in the planning. Mom said she would bring table decorations and tablecloths. She brought them and then immediately sat down and got on her phone. Didn't bother to even get the things out of the car. I asked her to frost cupcakes if she was just going to sit there while I set up tables. She agreed, but complained about it the whole time. Once my friends started showing up, she completely ignored everyone and just sat in the corner on her phone. My fiancé went out of his way to try and include her in every conversation. She knew a lot of people there, girls I've been friends with since first grade, people I went to high school with, my maid of honor's parents, and she just ignored everyone. Then complained to my fiancé that I wasn't spending time with her, even though I had set the day before our trip aside to specifically spend time with her and my younger siblings. After we got back from our trip, I found out I was pregnant. Again, she was the first one I called because I knew she would be upset if she wasn't. I called her several times and she didn't answer, so I called my dad and best friend and told them. When I finally got a hold of her, she said, "Wow, congrats," in the most monotone voice I've ever heard her use in my whole life. At the end of last month, her and my dad both told me they didn't know if they could afford to come to my wedding. Again, the date has been known for over a year. I don't understand why they didn't work out travel and lodgings in advance, not to mention my mother just moved recently to be closer to her boyfriend's job. I was honestly over all of her behavior at this point, so I figured it would be a good thing if she didn't show, and I was at peace with it. But she worked it out and called me this past week to tell me she got the plane tickets for her, my brother, and her boyfriend. Oh, and by the way, they were getting married in a week before my own wedding. My fiancé and I both cannot wrap our heads around how she could possibly think this is acceptable. She knows how much we've been looking forward to this, and it just feels like I'm not allowed to have anything for myself. She always needs a slice of whatever I get. Now she's gonna come to our wedding and tell everyone that she just got married too. I have to warn our photographers not to speak to her because I know she'll tell them she just got married and was wondering if they could take a few pictures of them together. She's going to try to make our wedding her wedding without having to pay for any of it. It feels like she's jealous and just wishes to be me. I don't know if it's the pregnancy hormones or if it's past trauma to do with her. We have a long history of not getting along. I thought we had been doing well in recent years until I met my fiancé. But I literally never want to speak to her again after this wedding. I'll definitely be going no contact for at least a little while. I don't know if anyone will even read this novel, but I desperately needed to get it off my chest. You know, it's so weird, Poster. You said that you were, 26 or 27 or something? But how is it that you have a mom who's clearly a petulant teenager? Like, all the stuff that you are bringing up sounds like a troubled teen who needs good parenting or something, some kind of intervention. Like, this is such unbecoming behavior of, anyone, but especially an adult who should be at least somewhat responsible. I am not sure what your mother is dealing with, what issues that she desperately needs to speak to a therapist about. Maybe her childhood was cut short by something and she's making up for it now. I don't know, but this is an incredibly self-centered person, and I don't blame you for wanting no contact with her. Like, this just sounds like everything is just about her, and she's not putting any real effort into being interested and being a part of your life. So, yeah, no, I think you're making the right call, and boy, I hope that wedding went okay. Story 3. My mom is cheating with a family friend, and my dad doesn't care. For clarity, the husband will be H and the wife will be W. My parents have been friends with a couple their age since before I was born. They're all best friends with each other. They seriously do so much together, and I've known the couple ever since I can remember. W is seriously the nicest person in the world. It makes me sick to think about because I've always been fairly close to H and W. And they have a son that I'm friends with. It also makes me feel even weirder because of all the things they've done for us. Apparently, they've helped my parents out with money before when things have been tight, like buying them a new car when my dad got in an accident and wrecked his and needed one for work. They're pretty rich, whereas we're not. That's not to say we're poor, but there was a stretch where my dad got laid off for a while. My mom works for our church, so I guess she doesn't make a whole lot, and my dad works for a car manufacturer, making better money than he did when I was younger. So anyways, last night, H was over at our house to hang out with my dad. Like I said, they're best friends, and he and W over here a lot. And my parents are over at their house a lot, so it's normal. Anyway, my dad went to bed kinda early because he has to get up early for work in the morning, but H stays to hang out with my mom for a bit. Again, that's normal for them. So the way our house is set up, it's 2 stories, and the ceiling of the living room goes up to the 2nd floor and is just kind of open so you can stand in the walkway of the upstairs and see into and hear what's going on in the living room. Well, I had been in my room for the most part, and I walked out to go to the bathroom when I overheard Mom and H in the living room talking in a more quiet than normal voice. I thought it was weird, so I tried to listen in on their conversation. I guess they thought I was asleep or still in my room. It's not word for word, but it's close enough. H. What time do you think you need to leave to pick up from school tomorrow? I was thinking I could come over for a little while if you feel up to it. Mom, you might as well just come over when she's dropped off at school. I've got some meetings to go to after lunch. H. Just text me when you get back to the house and I'll come over. Do you want me to bring over anything special? Mom, let's just keep it simple this time. We've been doing so much freaky stuff lately that I just want to take things easy the next couple of times. At first, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I was convinced I must have misheard things, but from their tone of voice, there was no mistaking it. I didn't listen to anything else because I felt like I was going to throw up and snuck back into my room. I felt completely numb. Here's my dad's best friend talking to my mom about coming over and having intercourse with her. I thought about just barging downstairs right then and there and going or walking up to tell my dad, but I was just too nervous and in shock to even move. After laying in my bed for what felt like an eternity, I finally decided I would get up before my dad left for work and talk to him about what I heard. Anyways, to make an even longer story short, I went downstairs around 5 a.m. when I heard my dad making breakfast and told him I needed to talk. After about 10 minutes of just rambling, I finally told him what I heard. At first, he had a look of surprise on his face, but pretty quickly he went back to looking like normal. He didn't even sound any different when he talked and just said, "Don't worry about anything, I'm sure you just misheard what they said." I was like, "No, Dad, I heard the way they were talking to each other." He just kept telling me not to worry about anything, that I must have heard incorrectly, taken things out of context, and so on. Not so much as I'll talk to Mom, or let me figure things out, or thanks for letting me know. I just don't understand. It's not like my parents have a bad relationship. They obviously love each other, and I've heard them having intercourse before. They've talked to me about intercourse before, so it's not like the topic of intercourse is awkward to talk about or anything either. Anyway, my dad left for work and left me alone in the house with my mom. I called one of my friends and asked them if they could pick me up for school because I couldn't even think about looking at my mom after all that's happened. I ended up getting my school stuff and going over to my friend's house because I didn't even want to wait for my mom to wake up. A little bit later, I got a text from my dad. Here's what it said. "I appreciate you coming to me this morning and talking. I again just want to tell you not to worry about whatever it is you heard. Like I said, I'm sure you just misunderstood what Mom and H were talking about. Please don't let this affect your day and just stay focused on school. We can talk more when I get home if you want." At this point, I just don't know what to do. I'm stuck at school. My dad either doesn't believe me or he does, but he doesn't care. And I can't even bear the thought of seeing my mom. I was thinking of either calling out my mom to her face when I got home, but the more I think about it, the more I know I probably couldn't do it. I was also thinking of texting W and letting her know. She's so nice and doesn't deserve to be cheated on either. My dad is just going to say the same thing as this morning. I don't even bother talking with him again. What should I do? I think your parents are in an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship or they're swingers or something. I mean, I genuinely believe that's what's happening. And I think the reason that your dad is saying, no, you misunderstood. Don't worry about it. Seriously, just leave it be. You've said that your mom works for your church. I'm pretty sure your church probably wouldn't be cool with that. But your parents are like, "Oh, we like our church. We have our beliefs, but also we kind of think this is just fine and need to keep this private." And so I'm willing to bet that's why he's saying this. Like, I might be wrong. I might be mistaken. Maybe dad is just in extreme denial about these things or something. I don't know. But it genuinely sounds to me like this is a dad who does not know how to broach the subject with you. Like, look, we're polyamorous. We're very good friends with this couple. Like, we're not just friends. We're friends with all the benefits. Like, I think that's totally fine. It can be very healthy for some people. Every time I say this, there are people in the comments like, "I've never heard of a polyamorous relationship that's worked out." Well, I've known a couple, so now you've heard of some, okay? Get over it. Seriously. Story 4. My boyfriend is in love with his best friend, but now regrets what happened. This is my first ever post, so I'm a bit nervous, but I need advice. About a month ago now, my long-term boyfriend, 27 male, and I, 24 female, broke up. We were a long distance at this time due to school, but we were working through it. Fine, or so I thought. During work, my ex-boyfriend had a bad fall and ended up in hospital for a while, obviously being worried. I asked if he'd like me to fly over to him for a while so I can look after him. He said no and that he'd rather me focus on school than look after him. I was iffy, but he reminded me his best friend was there to look after him as well. My ex's best friend, 26 female, and I got along well. They had a deep and hard history, which I understand, and never once told him to stop talking to her or anything. She was so kind and would send me daily checkups when he was sleeping because I was worried. I was told many times that they were like siblings, even told he called her Mom too. I was never worried as I trusted them both. One day, I had a bad feeling and I hated bringing up anything during this time because he was still suffering from his work accident, but it was eating up at me. I never was worried about them and said before, but it was like a sense of dread. We talked about our feelings a lot, encouraged it more than anything, so I brought up the feeling and now sort of regret it. He told me that his best friend ended up confessing to him that she's been in love with him for a while. His best friend also currently has a girlfriend. He said that she felt horrible and so guilty that she felt this way, but because she was caring for him, all the feelings sort of exploded. I wasn't angry, but I was sad because I already knew what was next. He also admitted that he was in love with her too, and I quote, "I always have been. It's just been covered up because of all the emotions I felt for you. I felt betrayed, but I kept telling myself that I understood. They had more history, they had a relationship I'd never be able to have with them. I felt broken, as if 5 years went down the drain. He didn't break up with me then. He said he needed to think about it, about our relationship. I love you, but I'm in love with her. And because I was so emotionally drained, I allowed that. A few days of talking, crying, and heartbreak, I decided to break up with him. I told myself that if I was the first choice, there shouldn't be a second. He ended up dating her a week after. We stayed friends, although it was tough, and that was probably the worst way to go. My ex left the hospital about a week after we broke up. He's been on meds, and a lot has happened to him since, stuff that broke my heart to hear. I love him more than life itself, and all I wanted was to be near him and hold him. We banned ourselves from any talk of relationships during this time, which held up until maybe 2 weeks ago when he told me they broke up. He told me that he was so confused and drugged up on meds in the hospital that too much happened so quickly while he was not fully able to understand and he regretted it. He told him all he wanted during the past 2 weeks was me. I wish I was happy. I mean, I was, but I just felt like I went for the highest point to the lowest point so fast and I had whiplash. I told him to focus on getting better, focus on his health and grief before anything else, and if one day he's ready, if he does actually want us back, then I'll be here waiting. Last night he texted me that he was in love with me. I know this is long and I apologize for any spelling mistakes as I wrote this in my feels. I love him. I'm in love with him. I've never stopped. And I know that he loves me, even if it's not in love as he says. I do want him back, but I know my trust issues will launch to a new high. Oh, that is a rough one, and I don't blame you. And my advice in this situation would be take your time. Really take some time to examine your feelings, examine how you feel on your own, and let him do the same, because if he was willing to let you go for this other thing, meds or not, I think you both need time to really process over everything. So I think you made the right call there, kind of holding off. The other thing I would say is if you do get back together, man, seek some counseling, or at the very least have some really, really open communication about how you're feeling. And make a conscious effort to work on that stuff, because boy, oh boy, after that happened, yeah, I don't blame you for having some trust issues. You absolutely should. And honestly, if after you take some time, it just sounds like too much and you really don't want to deal with it, you have that right. That's totally understandable. But boy, if you do try and make it work, either professional counseling or just, be ready for a lot of work. Story 5. Today I effed up for being gassy at a funeral. I, 34 male, have been thinking about this for the past few days. Passing gas is a normal human instinct, right? Well, I guess it isn't when you're at a funeral. A couple days ago, I was at my coworker Tom's, 27 male, aunt's funeral. Although I did not know his aunt very well, I went to it out of respect for my friend and not to his aunt. The night before this funeral, I went to my buddy's cookout, which had ribs and beans. The beans were very delectable and heavily seasoned, which I had 7 small bowls of. This was pretty normal to me, as I'm a pretty heavy eater and weigh about 257 pounds. I also ate the leftovers I brought home, which were the same beans and ribs for breakfast. Mind you, I tried pooping that morning and it was very unsuccessful. I was constipated, so I drank some laxatives, hoping I would pass the stool after the funeral. I got to see many of Tom's mourning family members. Shortly before the funeral eulogies began, I sort of already started feeling some gas coming out. Luckily, some of the cries of the family members covered the killers I sent out. I wanted to excuse myself, but I did not want to disrupt or miss the event. Some of the speeches the family members were giving out. I was sitting next to Tom's siblings, and I could tell his sister was already noticing the smells coming out of me. During his mom's speech, this was when I was getting really bad. I felt a big one coming, and this was it. It was over. At the middle of the speech, I just let it rip, and the sound of flatulence was now covered with the gasp of people in the room. Tom shot around and shouted out, "Come on, man," at me. This was when I felt really bad and guilty. I was surrounded by cold eyes and could see the people sitting next to me evacuating. The room was nearly empty, and only the remains of Tom and the immediate family members remained. I apologized and left, filled with guilt and embarrassment. Coming out of the room made me realize how fresh the air smelt, and how bad I made the room smell. I've not talked to Tom since, as he's been off work and has not messaged me. This has bothered me for the past week, and I've been feeling really sorrowful about the whole incident. You had beans and ribs for breakfast, after having a whole bunch of beans and ribs for dinner the night before. And then, when you didn't poop, you took laxatives before going to a funeral. I'm pretty sure that even a character in a sitcom wouldn't make these kinds of mistakes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to lay into you, but you made so many mistakes. And then the not leaving because you don't want to miss the big event. It's a funeral. I promise, if you make your way out, no one's gonna be like, wait, you're gonna miss the best part. The only advice I have in this situation is don't do this. Don't make this many mistakes. Use some common sense. Every step along the way, you had chances to not. You had the chance, you ate the beans for dinner. That's fine. You know what? You take care of it in the morning, whatever. But no, the morning comes and you ate more beans for breakfast. Okay, you're really kind of going for broke here. What's that? You took a laxative before a funeral. Just take it out when you get one. I can't help you people. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.